Hello and welcome to TiddyTalk.
Hi,
Hi.
We are your hosts. I'm Sam,
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Mallory.
and today we have some more interesting things to talk about. Today on our podcast, we are talking about an apartment building that collapsed in Florida. We're talking about Derek Chauvin, who was sentenced to 22 years in prison after the murder of George Floyd. And we'll be talking about more bodies that have been discovered in residential schools across Canada. So our first topic today. 4 Canadians are unaccounted for in the wake of a deadly Florida condo tower collapse. So this happened in Miami, Florida. 4 Canadians remain unaccounted for in the wake of a deadly collapse of a 12-story condo tower in a Florida shore town, where rescuers are working around the clock in hopes of finding survivors amid the rubble of the crumbled building. This is a terrible situation. It's shocking and it's tragic, Canada's Consul General in Miami, Susan Harper, told CBC News on Saturday as she stood in front of the Family Reflectuation Center, not far from the search and rescue site in the city of Surfside near Miami. Harper confirmed the 4 Canadians are from two different households. Relatives from one household are making their way to Florida as they wait for more information about the search and rescue operation. A relative of the other family was already in state. Because of privacy rules, they can't reveal names, ages, or any specific details about the missing. So, the collapse occurred 2 days ago when this article was posted, and the death toll has risen to 5, Miami-Dade Mayor Devena Levine Cava said on Saturday evening. Working throughout the day, rescue crews found another body amid the rubble, but also other human remains, he said. Rescue workers continue to go over the massive mountain of debris with rescue dogs and sonar searching for any survivors, he said. Our top priority continues to be to search and rescue and saving any lives that we can, she said. Basically, what happened here was that the condo in Florida collapsed, and there was an engineer beforehand that was aware of what was going on. Like the building either wasn't built correctly or they took shortcuts. Things were not put together properly, and the engineer was aware of this and basically just said, I don't care. So, a newly released 2018 report showed that an engineer found evidence of major structural damage beneath the pool deck and concrete deterioration in the underground parking garage in the condominium tower near Miami Beach, 3 years before it collapsed on Thursday. Officials said Saturday they harbored hope that some of the scores of people still unaccounted for might be found alive, but acknowledged that a fire somewhere beneath the rubble was slowing rescue teams, filling the area with smoke and frustrating firefighter efforts to locate the source. Aided by dogs, infrared scanning, and heavy equipment, rescuers held out hope that air pockets that may have formed in the debris might keep people alive. Among those anxiously awaiting word of a missing loved one was Rachel Spiegel, whose mother, 66-year-old Judy Spiegel, lived on the 6th floor. She says, I know my mom is a fighter. I know she loves us. I know she doesn't want to give up. So, the engineer's 2018 report, released by town officials, was produced for the condominium board in preparation for a major report project set to go underway this year. It wasn't immediately clear whether the damage described in the report was in any way connected to the collapse. Miami-Dade County Mayor Devila Levine Cava said officials had not been aware of the report. In an email, Vice Mayor Tina Paul called the structural issue described in the document very alarming. The engineer, Frank Morabato, warned that the waterproofing installed below the pool deck had failed due to a major error in design. He said the failed waterproofing is causing major structural damage to the concrete structural slab below these areas. Failure to replace the waterproofing in the near future will cause the extent of the concrete deterioration to expand exponentially. Morabato also said that concrete columns, beams, and walls in the garage were showing abundant cracking, including areas underneath the pool with exposed deteriorating rebar. Morabato could not be reached for comment on Friday. These are a couple pictures, basically, of what happened here.
Jeez.
Yeah, literally like half the building is gone.
Me in an apartment right now.
Uh.
I'm a little scared.
So, as said earlier in the article, dozens of people are unaccounted for, and at least one person is dead after a 12-story condo building collapsed in a beachfront community. So, when this article was posted, it said dozens of people are unaccounted for, and at least one person is dead. But as of 14 minutes ago, while recording this, so 10 people are now confirmed dead, and there's more than 150 still missing.
Holy shit.
So, Maribeto's firm submitted an 84-page document to the town in April detailing a 40-year-old building repair and restoration plan for the Champlain Towers South condominium. The condominium was preparing for refurbishment this year. a safety requirement for Florida buildings that reach 40 years of age. So, nearby properties are being evacuated. On Saturday, authorities said that they would help residents of a smaller tower nearby in Surfside, the Champlain Towers North, evacuate as they examine it for structural flaws that might indicate a similar risk. I need to be able to say it's safe, and I can't right now, Surfside Mayor Charles Burkett told Reuters. In an abundance of caution, it's probably prudent to let folks relocate for a couple of weeks while we check it. Burkett said he had no information to indicate the North Tower had similar structural flaws, but he said the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency would relocate residents for several weeks to allow a thorough review of the property. The evacuation is not mandatory, he said, but many residents are eager to leave.
It's funny. It's like, I can't. I need to be able to say it's safe, but I can't right now, as half of it's fucking collapsed. Well, no
Yeah.
shit.
I was watching CP24 with my mom the other morning because it was just what she had on TV, and they were talking about it. And they're relocating the other residents of the building to a hotel. So they're giving them like free room and board in hotels while they figure this out, which I guess is something, but like, Jesus. So there actually was a $5 million lawsuit filed against the association of the collapsed building. That lawsuit came previously, like before the building even collapsed. So like this building had issues for years.
Yeah, that is. I'd be suing the hell out of them. Even if my apartment didn't collapse, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I'm suing you anyway.
You know what?
Yeah.
You put
Fuck
me in danger. Fuck you.
Literally. Freaking landlords and like construction people, man, sometimes.
I've been told multiple times that a lot of people nowadays will cut corners, so I'm not even surprised that if they fixed it.
Oh yeah.
The building that partially collapsed literally right down the street from where I live and killed a couple people, the dude didn't even have the proper license to be building it.
Oh,
yeah, that's common because they fight. It's basically like a competition. You have the cheapest stuff and you get the most money for it, and you just use the cheapest materials that you can find. And that's basically why that happens so much. Unfortunately, it's really common.
And it's probably going to be worse.
There is a way to fix it, just a lot of people don't want to do it because, well, you can get so much money for fixing something for so cheap.
It's probably going to be worse too because the price of building materials has gone up so much since the pandemic.
Well, that's even like in my house, in our attic, half the attic has insulation and the other half just has nothing.
Yeah.
And like
common.
that's not like a major like it's gonna kill you thing, but it's still like what the fuck.
Yeah, the insulation it's just keeps the cold in and out sort of thing.
No wonder my room's so goddamn cold. But my mom even said too, she actually said the other day when we were watching this on CB24, she said too that like everyone just cuts corners and it's
It's no surprise at this point because they do it so often that people aren't even surprised.
People are just like, yep. Related to that topic of people cutting corners, there's an article here talking about the engineer who inspected and surveyed the building before it collapsed, obviously. It says the engineer who surveyed Champlain Towers for 6 months wasn't asked to look at its foundations, condo board lawyer reveals, as first survivor files a $5 billion lawsuit over the building collapse. Oh wait, I thought this lawsuit happened before. Maybe there was two? Maybe I might have just gotten mixed up. I guess the lawsuit was recently as well, because it says a resident has already filed a lawsuit against the building for $5 million because updates were due. That's my mistake. I thought the dude in the video said that it happened beforehand. So the engineer who studied Champlain Towers for 6 months before recommending changes for recertification did not study its foundation or look beneath the building, a lawyer for the Condo Board Association told Daily Mail. Frank Moriboto was hired by the Condo Association to review the building and give them a list of updates needed for its 40-year recertification. He was not asked to look at the building foundations or ground beneath it because it's not part of the general recertification requirements.
What?
It's not standard operating procedure to include excavating under the foundation, Donna DeMaggio Berger, an attorney for the Condo Board, told Daily Mail. Asked whether there was any mention of the foundation in the report, she replied, I don't believe so. Moriboto presented his report to the board, and at the top of the list of recommendations was fixing the roof before hurricane season. He recommended concrete work and other structural and electrical changes, but it's unclear what those were exactly. The ground beneath the building is what she says she had been told was likely the problem. I've reached out to a few engineers, and it would appear that it is a subsurface failure, she said.
Sounds like she's the lawyer for the building, so of course she's going to try to fight against that. Like, it doesn't matter if the engineers are... I mean, yeah, of course, but at the same time, the owner of the building didn't fix that and killed a bunch of people. So
So as I mentioned before, but if you missed it, they did reach out to Marabeto, the engineer, for comment. Obviously, didn't reply. So in regards to him only outlining the roof, Donna said, it makes sense because we're in hurricane season. It's June. If the roof blows off and you have a report saying you need repairs done and you haven't done it, you will not have a viable insurance claim. The roof work was the only work that was underway. The concreting job hadn't begun because it was still out for bid. Berger added that it was not the board of volunteer residents that should be blamed for the collapse, saying that they are grieving and displaced just like everyone else. So Donna, the lawyer of the building again, she said it was despicable that Manuel Denzer, a resident in the building, has already filed a $5 million lawsuit based on the fact that the building was due for repairs. She said, it's despicable. The fire chief hasn't decided what happened here. The mayor hasn't decided. FEMA hasn't. Engineers haven't. But this individual and his attorney decided within 24 hours? It's shocking. Right now, the focus has to be on finding the 150 people who are still unaccounted for. And frankly, I think it's a profound lack of respect, she said. So the board was not aware of research by a Florida State University researcher who detected that the ground was sinking beneath the building, but seemingly didn't warn anyone about it last year. There's too much murkiness here. It's easy to take a hands-off approach, but I don't think putting those kinds of burdens on volunteer board members who are just living in the building like everybody else. When you're talking about something as alarming as a building sinking, you'd think it would have been run up the flagpole. Donna says, did he ever present that research to the county, city, fire chief? Where else did he present it? My starting point would be giving it to the local officials and saying, hey, this is alarming. Berger said every engineer she has spoken to suggests that the issue had to have been subsurface. She says, I think the coming weeks will bear out that this was a subsurface issue. We know what didn't bring it down. It wasn't a hurricane. The building didn't come down on its own. We have a pretty good idea it was not intentional. That leaves a structural issue. So everything is going to depend on what you lay down first.
of course, it's not something that you meant to do. Like, nobody wants to make a building fall.
No, and it's obvious because she's the lawyer. Obviously, she's fighting to say it wasn't a structural issue because she's the lawyer of the building. She doesn't want to get sued. She doesn't want to. That's what lawyers do. She doesn't want to claim responsibility for all the lives that are potentially taken and for the people who are injured. And then the last update on it just says, as of right now, search and rescue teams are still combing through the rubble to try and find survivors. It's like my mom said too the other day. Again, she said, can you imagine if you were like sleeping when that happened? Like, Jesus.
No thanks.
It doesn't say what time it happened at, so
Yeah,
I assume like early morning or something.
I think so, because it said, like, when it was talking about when they started searching, it kept mentioning, like, afternoon time, so I think it happened probably early morning. At least the people who are in the opposite building, at least they're being evacuated.
Yeah, they'd have to now because they're probably both owned by they're either owned by the same person or they're on such close ground that they want to investigate all of it.
Yeah. I like how the mayor said, too, he's like, evacuation isn't mandatory, and everyone's like, get me the fuck out of here! I don't give a shit.
They know that people. I think it's because they know that people won't want to leave.
Nope, I'd be running far away as possible.
I'd be peacing it. I'd be like, peace out.
So moving on to our second segment, Derek Chauvin, who of course murdered George Floyd. So our next topic, Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison for the murder of George Floyd, which took place last year. A Minnesota judge sentenced former police officer Derek Chauvin to 22 and a half years in prison on Friday for the murder of George Floyd during an arrest in May 2020 on a Minneapolis sidewalk, video of which sparked global protests. A jury found Chauvin, 45, guilty on April 20th of unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter after a trial that was widely seen as a landmark in the history of U.S. policing. Before the sentence was handed down, Floyd's brothers told the court of their anguish. Chauvin's mother insisted on her son's innocence, and Chauvin himself briefly offered condolences to the Floyd family. Hennepin County District Judge Peter Chahal said it was important to recognize the pain of the Floyd family and acknowledge the global notoriety of the case, only to say it would not sway him. I'm not going to attempt to be profound or clever because it's not the appropriate time, Chahal said, explaining his reasoning would be laid out in a 22-page memoriam. I am not basing my sentence on public opinion. I'm not basing it on the attempt to send any messages. The job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases. The hearing began with prosecutors asking several members of Floyd's family to address the court. Floyd's 7-year-old daughter, Gianna, was first. appearing in a video recording. I ask about him all the time, she said in the video as Chauvin sat before the judge dressed in a gray suit and tie, a blue mask covering his nose and mouth. My daddy used to help me brush my teeth. Asked what she would say to him if she could see him again. She said, "It would be I miss you and I love you." Prosecutors had asked for a 30-year prison sentence, double the upper limit indicated in sentencing guidelines for a first-time offender. Jahal ruled earlier this month that prosecutors have established grounds for giving Chauvin a harsher sentence. The defense had asked for probation and had unsuccessfully sought a retrial ahead of an expected appeal. Video of Chauvin, who is white, kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man in handcuffs, for more than 9 minutes on May 25, 2020, caused outrage around the world, and it caused the largest protest movement seen in the United States in decades. Floyd's brother, Terrence Floyd, addressed Chauvin directly during his victim impact statement on Friday. He asked, "What was going through your head as you had your knee on my brother's neck?" He told the judge he wanted the maximum sentence. "We don't want to see no more slaps on the wrist. We've been through that already." Villainous Floyd, another brother, said that he was haunted by the videos of Floyd's death, which were replayed countless times at Chauvin's trial. Chauvin addressed the judge, saying he could not give a full statement due to additional legal matters. "But very briefly, though, I do want to give my condolences to the Floyd family," he said. "There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind. Thank you." He did not elaborate. Okay. Chauvin's mother, Carolyn Pauleni, told the judge she would always believe her son was innocent and that her life's two happiest moments were giving birth to Chauvin and pinning his police badge on him when he joined the Minneapolis Police Department. Okay. Derek has played over and over again in his head the events of that day, she said, her voice quivering at times. "I have seen the toll it has taken on him. I believe a lengthy sentence will not serve Derek well. When you sentence my son, you will also be sentencing me."
I can't blame her because she's his mom, and of course she feels that way. No matter who you are as a mom, you just, you want what's best for your son. However, she should think more about the impacted lives of other people and not just herself. Like, I totally get it, because if I was in her shoes, I would probably also be like, hey, my son's like better than this because that's my son. There's a time and a place to do that, and it's definitely not when your son killed somebody else. Maybe if he's like, I don't know, falsely accused of something, which in this case he isn't.
Yeah.
But
I think 22 years is too light.
It definitely is. Yeah.
Like, come on, do like 50 or 100.
Yeah, it's probably state laws, unfortunately.
I mean, I agree with
He broke the law.
He did, but again, it's laws, and laws are different in each state. It doesn't matter if you break a law in like California or here, it's different in each state. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
I agree with what Rachel said in regards to, like, if it was my child, I would definitely, be upset, and I'd be like, my son, or my daughter or whatever is better than this. This is not who they are. I raised them to be better than this. But at the same time, I would definitely hold them accountable still, which is what she's not doing. It's like, my child killed someone. Like, obviously I love my child and I'm destroyed that they would do this, but they did it. They killed someone. They need to
go to jail and be held accountable for that. That's if my like, I've always said to myself, like, if my brother did that and he's going to jail, I'd be like, I love you, brother, but you deserve to go there.
See ya.
Yeah, you got to do your time for the crime. So there is a video here that is actually Chauvin's mother. Like, it's the words from her mouth as she's speaking about the crime that he committed.
Innocence. There's video evidence.
Her case, she's probably just blinded by her son's love.
There is cases of that happening before. I hate to bring him up, but he is a good example. Luca Magnotta, who is a very awful person, murdered tons of animals, murdered people, and his mother in the if you watch the documentary "Don't Fuck with Cats" on Netflix, his mother to this day still defends him to the end and says my son is innocent when there's video evidence of the victim that he dismembered.
Unfortunately, I think it's more of a, I don't want my son to be the man that he is, so I'm gonna pretend that he's actually better than he is.
Like, I don't want to believe my son's a horrible person.
Even with Luca Magnotta's mother, when they confronted her in an interview and they said, your son was killing animals at basically a toddler's age, because she told people that he had killed baby birds and stuff. And they're like, you realize that those are early signs of a dysfunction in the brain in children. That is the sign that your child is either going to become a sociopath or a psychopath. Yeah. And she's like, well, it's not exactly what she said, but she basically said that I believe my son was doing that for fun. Well, yeah, in this woman's case, I think she just doesn't want to see her son obviously go to jail. And she probably believes truly that he is innocent too, because there are people on the internet who believe that he is innocent. They'll say like, "Oh, he wasn't pushing down on his neck, or he was using the correct amount of force, or whatever." Obviously, he was not, because if I remember correctly, wasn't George Floyd, all he had was like a legal law? No, it was a counterfeit bill, wasn't it?
They thought it was counterfeit.
And I don't know about you, but like tackling someone to the ground, handcuffing, and then cutting off their airway is not the proper response to a counterfeit bill. But and we say that she says that her son is not racist. Whether he's racist or not, the police force is definitely, they act on racism, or they act on I guess you could say what is believed to be racism, but it is racism because they're always more violent with people who are people of color, mainly black people. In a sentencing memorandum, prosecutors from the Minnesota Attorney General's office wrote that Chauvin's crime shocked the conscience of the nation. In a 6-page ruling last month, Chauvin found that prosecutors had shown there was 4 aggravating factors that would allow him to hand down a longer prison term than sentencing guidelines would dictate. The judge agreed that Chauvin abused his position of trust and authority, that he treated Floyd with particular cruelty, that he committed the crime as part of a group with 3 other officers, and that he committed the murder in front of children. Through his attorney Eric Nelson, Chauvin had asked in court filings that the judge to sentence him to probation, writing that the murder of Floyd was best described as an error made in good faith. Okay, so here, as we were discussing before, Chauvin was helping arrest Floyd on suspicion of using a fake $20 bill.
They thought it was counterfeit. And it wasn't, like, it sucks, not a counterfeit. It sucks because what the fuck happened to the guy that was helping him? All I know is that they both got put on leave or fired or something like that. What about the other guys that were helping him? I'm pretty sure there were 2 cops that were helping him. Where are they? What happened? I know, like, I'm glad he's getting arrested, but what about the other 2?
There was 2 others. I believe the other was a white man, and I'm pretty sure the other one was Asian, because I know there was also quite an uproar of people saying this man is Asian and he's attacking a black man. Like, we are both people of color. Like, our races should be standing together. And he basically assisted in this murder of a black man. I know that was a huge thing online.
Where are they? What happened to them?
I have no idea. Yeah, all I heard was that they were told to leave their jobs. Other than that, I haven't heard anything. They didn't help. They didn't help Floyd, I should say. They held him down, and
they basically let him. They didn't even tell him to get off his neck. Like they allowed that. They didn't instigate it, but they definitely didn't stop it.
Oh, actually, right here in the article. Shit.
Oh, sweet.
It says the 3 other police officers involved in Floyd's arrest were, like Chauvin, fired the day after. The 3 are due to face trial next year on charges of aiding and abetting Floyd's murder.
Good.
And then, to finish off this topic, I just have one last video here, which is actually the video of Chauvin being sentenced to prison.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count 1, based on the verdict of the jury, finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2, paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentenced for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life.
Good.
Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis. Anything for the defense? All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Yeah.
He handled that pretty well, but shit.
Yeah. LMFAO, buy garbage.
Yeah, so now he's with that, he's basically like in for the sentencing that he has. Plus, he's registered, which means that he can't. Him registering as an offender means that he should not be able to get a police job. Well, we all know police jobs can be kind of shady, but that is supposed to mean that legally he cannot work as a cop, as far as I understand.
So, goodbye, buddy. Have fun in prison. I hope you drop the soap a lot. I hope it sucks. I hope you get beat up. And I hope you're miserable. The end.
I hope he never gets a chance to get out. Even if he's really good, I hope he never gets a chance.
Okay. So our next and last segment. Following last week, we spoke about how Indigenous bodies were found underneath a school in BC. Well, now there is an estimated 751 unmarked graves found at former Saskatchewan residential school.
Yikes.
So following our discussion last week, now they have found more unmarked graves in Manitoba. And more recently, on June 24th, they found 751 unmarked graves under a residential school in Saskatchewan. An estimated 751 unmarked graves were found at the site of the former Merivale Residential School. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations and Countis First Nation in Saskatchewan spoke on this on Thursday. The announcement was made at a virtual press conference by FSIN Chief Bobby Cameron and Cowas First Nation Chief Commandus Delorme, and comes weeks after 215 unmarked burial sites were reported at a residential school in Kamloops. Chief Delorme said they cannot confirm all the unmarked graves contain children. There are oral stories of adults being buried there as well. The residential school gravesite was run by the Roman Catholic Church. Delorme said, "We did not remove these headstones. Removing headstones is a crime in this country. We are treating this as a crime scene at the moment, and will know more as we continue our search." Delorme added that this is not a mass gravesite, instead calling the discoveries unmarked graves. In the 1960s, the Catholic Church removed the headstones, and today we have over 600 unmarked graves, he continued. Delorme explained that the gravesites were first started in 1886 when the Roman Catholic Church came to the community. The land is referred to as the community gravesite after the 1970s when the Roman Catholic Church and the Artichoke ceased operations of the residential school. Merivale Indian Residential School operated between 1899 and 1997. Delorme clarified that the school opened in 1898 and was closed in 1996. According to oral stories, Delorme said children from some areas in southwestern Manitoba went to the school. Children in south central Saskatchewan also went to Merivale, but Delorme said that a majority of the children were from Treaty 4 territory, which spans southern Saskatchewan. Treaty 1 Nation in Manitoba sent their condolences to the Cowas First Nation community. The Treaty 1 Nation is saddened to learn that more children's bodies were found in the grounds of the former Merivale IRS, the largest gravesite discovery to date, said spokesperson Chief Dennis Meach. One knowledge keeper from Cowas First Nation also spoke at the press conference about her experience at Merivale. Florence Spervier, 80, said nuns at the school were very mean to us. She said we had to learn how to be Roman Catholic. We couldn't say our own little blessings the way we said them at home. We had our own way of honoring ourselves and Mother Earth in our homes when we were little, but we had to leave all that afar. Sperver added at home she was taught how to look after herself physically, mentally, and spiritually, but that was all stripped away when she went to a residential school. They told us what to say, they told us about a new being that was supposed to be our ultimate savior, but the ones we had in our school, they were not nice either. They were very condemning about our people. Sperver said children were told their family members didn't have a way to be spiritual because they were, quote-unquote, all heathens. So the search of unmarked graves is in its beginning stage, essentially. The search for unmarked graves on Cowas First Nation is just in Phase 1, Delorme explained in the press conference. Cowas First Nation had begun the process on June 2nd with the help of Saskatchewan Polytechnic, which used ground-penetrating radar technology. As of Wednesday, a total of 751 hits were found using the tech, which has 10 to 15 error percentage. Phase 1 of the process has covered 44,000 square meters. We can't confirm if there's more than one body under that hit, Delorme said. In some cases, graves are 1 meter by 1 meter apart. We want to make sure when we tell our story that we're not trying to make numbers sound bigger than they are. Delorme added that the technical team will be assessing the hits and a verified number should be available in the coming weeks. As the cemetery was run by the Roman Catholic Church, Delorme said there's a possibility that some people buried at the site may have attended the church and lived in local surrounding towns. The community plans to put names to these unmarked graves. We want to honor our loved ones that lay here today. We want to make sure that we keep the place and preserve it so that many could come here and heal. Currently, flags mark all 751 flags. Delorme explained that there was a strong Catholic belief at one time that if someone wasn't baptized or too young to be baptized, they could not be buried in the church's cemetery. Included in the search of Phase 1 were sites where non-baptized individuals may have been buried. In Phase 2, other locations on the First Nations will be searched that are presumed grave sites identified by community members. Archbishop of Regina, Don Bolin, sent a letter to Delorme on Thursday apologizing for the failures and sins of church leaders and staff. I know that apologies seem like a very small step as the weight of past suffering comes into greater light, but I extend that apology again and pledge to do what we can to turn that apology into meaningful, concrete acts, Bolin said. Bolin added that Artichokes will help with accessing information to help come up with names and information about those buried in the unmarked graves. FSIN Chief Cameron thanked Cowas First Nation for the challenging work they completed by searching the site. Cameron spoke out against residential schools, the 60 Scoop day schools, and the children welfare system. He said there has to be and must be immediate change, where our First Nation children come home to our communities and be raised in communities amongst our own language and culture experts. This was a crime against humanity, an assault on First Nation people. We are proud people. The only crime we ever committed as children was being born Indigenous. He continued on to say, we will find more bodies and we will not stop until we find all of our children. We will do a search of every Indian residential school site, and we won't stop there. We will also search all of the sanitariums, Indian hospitals, and all of the sites where people were taken and abused, tortured, neglected, and murdered. Cameron said the FSIN is calling on the Canadian government and Catholic Church to hand over records to help communities identify buried children and cause of death. We try to put ourselves in the eyes and bodies of these children who are now being found in the ground, who have been waiting for decades to have a proper burial and to be honored properly amongst our own protocols, traditions, and customs. And a small First Nations voice said, they found us, they found us. According to the National Center for Truth and Relocation Records, the school was constructed by Roman Catholic missionaries. The federal government started funding the school in 1901, and the National Center's public records list that 8 students died there. So that's all they have on record, basically, is just that 8 people died there. Not all the other graves that are underneath.
That is so freaking horrible. I mean, like, obviously I knew it was gonna be worse. And then, like, I'm just still surprised when it gets worse. But at the same time, I'm not, you know?
Frankly, I think they should have been on this, like, years ahead of its time. But I think at the same time, it's good that it's coming out. And like you said, I think there's going to be a lot more, and I think it's going to be a lot worse. Because these residential schools were all over Canada.
It's just going to keep getting worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of people, Indigenous communities are asking people to either not celebrate Canada Day at all, or just kind of tone down your celebrations.
I'm not.
And not be so loud about it. And a lot of people are calling that a leftist millennial movement.
Is that a bad thing?
But that's not even what it is. Even it's just like showing respect for
saying solidarity
for all these poor children that were wrongly abused and murdered because they were Indigenous for no other reason.
Yeah. Why would we celebrate Canada Day for being horrible? And Canada hasn't even done their part at all.
It's the same with Thanksgiving. I never really saw the point in celebrating Thanksgiving. And then when I learned that Christopher Columbus isn't even the one who discovered Canada and he just committed mass genocide, I was like, okay, now why are we really celebrating Thanksgiving? Like, what the fuck?
Let's be real. Nobody celebrated it. We literally just took the holiday. I know it's celebrated in America for sure. I've never met anybody that truly celebrates Thanksgiving. I've literally only met people that just take it because it's a holiday and you get it off.
My mom kind of celebrates it, I guess, but she doesn't really give a shit about Christopher Columbus. It's more like, let's be thankful that we have all this stuff, and then that's it.
Yeah, I literally just took it to eat the food.
Me.
I was like, hell yeah, more food.
More fucking food.
In light of more of these graves being found, a pastor came out and he shared some unpopular comments about Canada's residential schools, to which, after he got backlash for it, he resigned immediately.
See ya.
The Archdiocese of Toronto tweeted Friday that Cardinal Thomas Collins accepted Monsignor Owen Keenan's resignation and placed him on an indefinite leave of absence. The tweet said, "We apologize for the pain caused by his recent remarks." Keenan of Merciful Redeemer Parish, a Catholic church located in the area of Glen Aaron Drive and Aaron Center Boulevard, came under fire earlier this week for controversial remarks that he delivered to his parish. Keenan said that 2/3 of the country blames the church for the tragedies that occurred in residential schools and went on to suggest some would not agree. So this was said during his service as of last weekend. He said, "I presume that the same number would thank the church for the good that was done in those schools. In fact, we're not allowed to say that good was done in those schools." The comments drew sharp criticism from Indigenous communities and from Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie. Prior to his resignation, Keenan apologized in a written statement. His remarks came amid recent discoveries of 2015 unmarked burial sites at a former residential school in Kamloops, BC, and an estimated 751 unmarked graves at the former Meverill Residential School in Saskatchewan. There is a short video here that covers this idiot and what he had to say about the residential schools.
A Mississauga church has been defaced following highly controversial comments made about residential schools Sunday. Monsignor Owen Keenan told his parish that 2/3 of the country blames the church for the tragedies that occurred in residential schools, and then went on to suggest that others would thank the church
for the good that was done in those schools. But of course, that question was never asked. And in fact, we're not allowed even to say that good was done in those schools.
The comments come at a time when the country is in mourning for Indigenous communities. Last month, the remains of 215 children were discovered at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School site in BC. In a written statement, the priest says he regrets that residential schools existed, writing, "I am deeply sorry, embarrassed, ashamed, and shocked at the revelations of abuse, destruction, and harm done in residential schools across the country."
Sheesh.
We were in Peterborough and they had all. I didn't know that they were doing all children matter. So I was really confused when I saw it, and then I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I got it." But there were all children matter like all over the
Yeah.
GTA.
Yeah. I like how he
Right.
called the church mentally unstable.
I mean, I'm not even surprised. It's the Catholic Church. Like, I'm not even surprised. The Catholic. I know not all, because I know we're gonna get attacked for this. I know not all,
Book it.
but most Catholic people are fucking insane.
Most
It's-
religious people are fucking insane.
Yeah.
And, well, Catholic in this sense because it was the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
So, like, specifically only speaking Catholic Church, Catholic people are fucking insane. They are absolutely like, "Oh my god, you don't think Jesus is the reason for the season? How dare you, you piece of shit person? You should go die." And it's like, wow. What about Jesus? Would he say that?
Not to mention that people who are very religious, it's linked to low intelligence and delusional thinking. So, there's that too.
Not even surprised.
Oh, so no wonder I'm not religious. I'm just too smart. I get it.
Yep. I'm still delusional, but I'm
Yeah!
at least I'm smart.
Be religious if you want, but just don't shove it in my face. I don't
Right.
give a shit. But if your religion is causing harm, then you may want to rethink your morals and your values.
Religion is
Because,
just
like,
If
never
your
had-
religion hates on any group of people, including race, sex, or sexuality, your religion should seriously reconsider, and you should really think about your God and if your God would accept
yeah.
the people that you are hating. And also, I don't think this priest actually believed what he said in his final statement, because he was in his sermon, he was basically like, people say all bad stuff was done at the school. This school did good things. People won't let us talk about the good things done at the school. And then in his apology, suddenly he was like, there was crimes committed in these schools and it was unjust and, it wasn't fair to the Indigenous people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
do you really mean that, or are you just saying that because everyone jumped down your throat? People say all bad stuff was done at the school. This school did good things. People won't let us talk about the good things done at the school. And then in his apology, suddenly he was like, there was crimes committed in these schools and it was unjust and, it wasn't fair to the Indigenous people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
do you really mean that, or are you just saying that because everyone jumped down your throat?
he's like, "Oh shit, people don't agree with me."
I mean, I'm sure his following agrees with him, unfortunately. And that concludes our episode of our podcast.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay!
Thank you for listening and tuning in. We hope you join us next week.
And stay tuned for Instagram. We will be discussing and revealing topics that we will be talking about very soon.